India just made a $240 billion decision that could end America's dominance forever. And if you've ever wondered why oil gas prices keep rising while some countries seem immune to global chaos, what you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about world power. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment, "I subscribe," and I'll personally welcome you into the family. With that said, let's get started. See, while Americans were distracted by domestic politics, India quietly executed the most brilliant geopolitical chess move of the 21st century. In 2023 alone, their trade with Russia exploded by 400% despite every Western sanction you can imagine. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let me introduce you to Rajesh. 3 years ago, this 34-year-old software engineer from Bangalore had his bags packed for Silicon Valley. He'd spent 2 years preparing for his H-1B visa, dreaming of that American tech salary. Then everything changed. When the US slashed H-1B approvals by 60%, Rajesh watched his American dream evaporate overnight. But here's where the story gets interesting. Instead of sulking, Rajesh stayed in India and now makes more money than he ever would have in California. How? Because while America was building walls, India was building bridges. A Stanford Research Institute study from 2024 found that 73% of Indian tech workers now actually prefer staying in India over moving to America. That's a complete reversal from just 5 years ago. And when I show you what's happening on a larger scale, you'll understand why this should terrify Washington. Right now, as I speak, massive oil tankers are crossing the Indian Ocean, carrying Russian crude that's keeping India's economy booming, while European factories shut down from energy costs. But that's just the beginning of America's nightmare. Because something incredible happened that most Western media completely ignored. Remember those China-India border tensions that nearly sparked a war? Those disputes are down 89% since their secret Chennai talks in late 2023. Secret talks that nobody in Washington was invited to. Meet Priya, a 28-year-old trader from Mumbai, whose family has run an import business for 3 generations. For decades, every single transaction went through US dollars. Her grandfather dealt in dollars, her father dealt in dollars, and she thought she would too. Last month, Priya processed her first payment in Chinese yuan. Not because she was forced to, but because it was cheaper, faster, and didn't require approval from any American bank. It felt strange at first, she told me, but then I realized, why should we ask permission from New York to trade with our neighbors? She's not alone. The Peterson Institute just published a study showing that India-China trade hit a record $136 billion in 2024. That's money that used to flow through American financial systems, creating American jobs, paying American taxes. Not anymore. Look at this map. These red lines show traditional trade routes, all controlled by the US Navy, all dependent on the dollar system America built after World War II. Now look at these blue lines. These are the new routes connecting India, China, and Russia, routes that completely bypass Western control. What happened next shocked even the CIA. India just launched something called the Unified Payments Interface for international transactions. Sounds boring, right? It's actually a financial weapon that could make the US dollar worthless. Here's why. Meet Amit, a 45-year-old businessman from Delhi. Last Tuesday, he completed a $2 million machinery deal with a Russian company. The entire transaction took 30 minutes, cost him $50 in fees, and never touched a single American bank. He paid in rupees, they received rubles, and somewhere in between, a computer system handled the conversion. No SWIFT network. No Federal Reserve oversight. No American involvement whatsoever. The Bank of International Settlements quietly released data showing that non-dollar trade among BRICS nations is up 340% in just 2 years. While American officials hold emergency meetings in empty Federal Reserve conference rooms, BRICS summits are so packed they have to turn countries away. But here's what the mainstream media isn't telling you about this alliance. China and India didn't just settle their border disputes. They created something far more dangerous to American interests. It's called the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and it's already funded $37 billion in projects that directly compete with World Bank initiatives. Remember when America could force countries to choose sides? Those days are over. Let me show you exactly how India is playing both sides while slowly tilting away from the West. When Russia invaded Ukraine, America demanded India pick a side. Biden personally called Modi 3 times. The European Union sent delegations. The pressure was immense. India's response: they bought more Russian oil than ever before. But here's the genius part: they didn't make it personal. Prime Minister Modi still shows up to G7 meetings, still shakes hands with Biden, still maintains diplomatic relations. But behind the scenes, complete economic decoupling. Take Sundar, a 52-year-old steel manufacturer from Punjab. His company used to import raw materials from Australia and Canada, both American allies who followed US sanctions religiously. Today, he sources everything from Russia and Kazakhstan at prices that are 40% lower than Western alternatives. Business is business, Sundar told me while touring his expanded factory floor. When someone offers me better prices and doesn't lecture me about my democracy, why will I say no? My workers don't care about geopolitics. They care about paychecks. The Oxford Economics Institute tracked this trend across 200 Indian companies. The result: a 67% increase in non-Western sourcing since 2022. That's not just numbers. That's the foundation of American industrial power crumbling in real time. But the most dangerous move is still coming. India just cancelled $3.5 billion worth of US defense contracts. Money that would have gone to American workers, American companies, American communities, gone. Instead, they bought Russian S-400 missile systems that Washington specifically told them not to buy. Colonel Vikram spent 15 years of his military career training with American forces. He learned American tactics, flew American aircraft, considered Americans his brothers in arms. Today, he trains Indian pilots on Russian equipment, using Russian manuals, following Russian protocols. Nothing personal, he told me with a smile. It's just business. The Russians sell us weapons without lectures about human rights or democracy. They treat us as equals, not as students who need to be taught how to behave. The numbers don't lie. According to the SIPR Arms Transfer Database, India's weapons imports from the US dropped 37% since 2022. But here's what's really shocking. Their domestic weapons production increased by 156% in the same period. You see, India isn't just buying Russian weapons. They're learning to make their own. Joint ventures with Russian defense companies have created manufacturing facilities that can produce everything from fighter jets to missile systems without any American technology. The BrahMos missile system, a joint India-Russia project, is now so advanced that even China is nervous. It can strike targets 900 kilometers away with pinpoint accuracy. And guess what? Zero American components. This is what defense experts call the Great Uncoupling. For 70 years, American weapons came with American influence. Countries that bought F-16s had to maintain relationships with America. Not anymore. Then India made their boldest energy move yet. While Americans were paying record prices at gas stations, India secured 40% of their oil supply from Russia at a 30% discount. Think about that. As your energy bills skyrocketed, India's were dropping. Meera is a housewife from Chennai with 2 kids and a tight budget. She noticed something strange last year. While her sister in California was complaining about 60% increases in utility costs, Meera's cooking gas bill actually went down by 25%. My sister keeps asking how we afford everything. Mira laughed. I tell her it's simple. We don't let politicians in Washington decide what we can and cannot buy. But here's where this gets really interesting. India didn't just buy Russian oil. They built an entire shadow fleet to transport it. These aren't Russian ships. They're Indian-owned, Indian-operated tankers that can carry oil anywhere without asking permission from the US Navy. The Oxford Energy Institute calculated that India saved $27 billion on energy costs in 2024 alone. That's $27 billion that stayed in Indian pockets instead of flowing to American oil companies or Middle Eastern kingdoms that fund American foreign policy. And here's the kicker. They're using those savings to build renewable energy infrastructure. Solar panels, wind farms, battery storage systems, all manufactured in India, powered by cheap Russian energy during the transition. Energy security expert Dr. Rakesh Sharma from the Delhi School of Economics told me something chilling. America controlled the world through oil for 50 years. India is showing everyone how to break free from that control. Other countries are watching and learning. He's right. Brazil just announced a similar deal with Russia. Indonesia is negotiating their own arrangement. Even traditional US allies like Turkey and Saudi Arabia are exploring alternatives to the dollar-denominated oil system. But wait, there's something even bigger happening that nobody's talking about. India and China aren't just trading more. They're creating an entirely new internet. Not the American internet that runs through US servers and follows US laws. A separate network that connects 3 billion Asian users without any Western involvement. Meet Rohit, a 29-year-old app developer from Hyderabad. 2 years ago, his startup depended entirely on American platforms: Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Facebook's ad network. Today, he operates completely on Chinese servers with Indian payment systems. The speed is incredible. Rohit showed me his dashboard. Data doesn't have to travel to California and back. Everything stays in Asia. My costs dropped 60%, and my app runs twice as fast. This isn't just about speed and cost. It's about control. When TikTok was banned in India, Chinese companies immediately created Indian alternatives. When Google threatened to leave over data localization laws, Indian companies filled the gap. The result: India now has its own tech ecosystem that doesn't need Silicon Valley. Their digital payment system processes more transactions than Visa and MasterCard combined. Their social media platforms have hundreds of millions of users who never touch American apps. A McKinsey study from late 2024 found that Asian tech companies are now investing more in R&D than their American counterparts. Not just in total dollars, but capita. They're not just copying Western technology anymore. They're creating better alternatives. But here's what should really scare American tech giants. India just announced they're launching their own global positioning satellite system. Not GPS. Not the Russian GLONASS. A completely Indian system that will serve not just India, but half the world. Why does this matter? Because every smartphone, every car, every delivery truck in Asia could soon depend on Indian satellites instead of American ones. That's not just market share. That's strategic dependence shifting from west to east. The space race isn't about getting to Mars anymore. It's about controlling the infrastructure that runs modern life. And America is losing. Remember when India's space program was a joke? They were launching satellites on Russian rockets with Russian technology. Today, they're landing spacecraft on the moon at a fraction of NASA's cost and offering launches to countries that can't afford American services. Countries that used to depend on America for satellite launches are now going to India. Countries that used to rely on GPS are preparing to switch to Indian alternatives. Countries that couldn't afford Western space technology are buying Indian systems. This is the new space race, and America isn't even competing. But the financial revolution is what will re-end American dominance. While Americans debate cryptocurrency regulations, India and China are building the future of money. Not Bitcoin, not digital dollars. Something entirely new that connects their 3 billion citizens in a financial system that operates completely outside Western control. Meet Kavya, a 31-year-old entrepreneur from Pune who runs an export business selling textiles to 15 countries. Last year, currency conversion and international transfer fees cost her company $180,000. This year, less than $5,000. How? The new Asia-Pacific Payment Alliance allows instant transfers between member countries at near zero cost. No American banks involved. No dollar conversions required. No compliance with US financial regulations. It's like the internet in 1995. Kavya explained while showing me her transaction history. We're building something completely new while the old system fights to survive. The Federal Reserve released a classified report last month, leaked to the Wall Street Journal, estimating that non-dollar international transactions could reach 45% by 2030. That's up from just 15% in 2020. Think about what that means. Almost half of global trade could soon happen without any American oversight, American banks, or American influence. The system that's given America power since World War II could become irrelevant in just 5 years. Central bank digital currencies aren't theory anymore. They're reality. China's digital yuan processes billions in transactions monthly. India's digital rupee is expanding to international trade. Russia's digital ruble bypasses every Western sanction. Meanwhile, America is still debating whether to create a digital dollar, while the rest of the world moves ahead without them. Here's what this means for ordinary Americans. Every iPhone you buy, every Netflix subscription you pay for, every tax dollar that funds America's global military presence. It's all supporting a system that's rapidly losing control. The question isn't whether American dominance will end. The question is whether you'll be prepared when it does. Smart Americans are already seeing the signs. The dollar's purchasing power has dropped 17% since 2021. American companies are losing market share in Asia at record rates. Tech giants that once seemed invincible are being replaced by Asian alternatives. But here's what most Americans don't realize. This isn't happening because America is failing. It's happening because the rest of the world is succeeding. For the first time in 200 years, other countries don't need Western technology, Western finance, or Western approval to prosper. India's GDP grew 7.2% last year, while America's managed 2.1%. China's manufacturing output increased 15%, while American factories struggled to find workers. Russia's economy, supposedly crippled by sanctions, grew faster than Germany's. The multipolar world isn't coming. It's here. While politicians in Washington argue about pronouns and TikTok bans, smart Americans are already diversifying their investments into emerging markets. They're learning Mandarin and Hindi instead of assuming the world will always speak English. They're positioning themselves for the new reality instead of denying it exists. Because here's the final shock that most Americans can't accept. By 2030, experts predict that the India-China-Russia alliance could control 45% of global GDP. Not influence, control. We're not just watching the decline of American power. We're watching the birth of a new world order that doesn't need America's permission to exist. The signs are everywhere if you know how to look. Your local Walmart is filled with products from these countries. Your gas station is supplied by their refineries. Your smartphone contains their minerals. Your retirement fund invests in their companies. America taught the world capitalism. Now the students have become the teachers. The only question left is this. Will you adapt to the new world order, or will you cling to the old one until it collapses completely? So here's my question for you. Would you bet your financial future on America's fading dominance, or start preparing for the Asian century? And which country do you think will be the next to publicly challenge US power? Drop your boldest prediction in the comments. I'll personally respond to the most controversial ones, and trust me, some of you are going to shock me with what you're already seeing in your own communities.